All right, today we're going to break down a topic that can save nonprofits a whole lot of headaches. Which states are actually the easiest for fundraising registration?
And just so you know, this explainer is part of the Multi-State Fundraising Compliance series. It's presented by Ironwood Registrations, where we try to break down these complex regulations into practical advice for nonprofit leaders just like you.
So let's dive right in. If you're a nonprofit that's fundraising nationally, you already know that the rules, well, they change a lot from state to state. Some states have really complex, detailed requirements, while others have created much simpler processes that are way easier to manage. And that brings us to the big question here. What actually makes a state's registration process easy? Honestly, for any nonprofit fundraising in multiple states, getting a handle on this is a real game changer for your compliance strategy. First thing you have to remember is that all of these laws are created at the state level. Each state designs its own framework, and that's exactly why we have this kind of patchwork of different rules all across the country. So when you look at the states with simpler systems, you start to see a few common threads, right? They tend to have shorter registration forms, they require less detailed financial reporting, they've got simpler renewal processes, and they process all that paperwork a whole lot faster. Put them all together, and these factors make compliance so much easier to handle.
Okay, so let's dig into that first major factor, the registration system itself.
States with a really straightforward process often use standardized forms and have clear, easy-to-follow filing procedures. And that clarity, that is absolutely key. It reduces all the guesswork and makes it much easier to get your submission right the first time.
So in many of these streamlined states, the process looks a lot like this. You're just submitting your basic info, giving them proof of your federal tax-exempt status, and you're including a copy of your most recent IRS Form 990. Now, requirements can still vary, but the whole process generally has fewer layers of that intense regulatory review. Next up is a factor that can be a huge relief. We're talking about reducing that financial reporting burden. So the key here is the financial reporting structure. Some states you see, they don't require those expensive and time-consuming audited financial statements until your fundraising crosses a pretty high dollar threshold. For all you small and mid-sized nonprofits out there, this is just a massive advantage. It dramatically cuts down on the administrative and financial burden, and that makes compliance far more manageable, especially for organizations with limited resources. Okay, let's shift our focus to what happens after you're registered. Let's talk about the importance of a clear and predictable renewal process. You know, the states with consistent renewal systems they're simply easier to manage. For example, some tie their renewal deadlines right to your nonprofit's fiscal year end, or maybe it's IRS Form 990 filing date. When the system follows a predictable timeline and it doesn't demand a bunch of extra paperwork, staying compliant year after year becomes so much simpler. Now, this next point is absolutely critical. Compliance is always required. It is so essential to remember that simpler never ever means optional. Even in the states with the most streamlined systems, you still have to submit accurate filings and you have to renew on time. Every state still maintains its own regulatory authority. So what does that mean for you? It means you still need to actively monitor your renewal deadlines, you've got to keep an eye on financial reporting requirements as you grow, and you have to stay aware of any updates to that state's charitable solicitation laws. Keeping organized records is really the key to making sure even these simpler registrations stay current. All right, let's pull all these threads together and talk about how this all fits into your bigger overall compliance strategy. Look, most nonprofits fundraising nationally have to manage a mix of simple and complex states. And the contrast is pretty stark. On one side, you've got minimal documentation and standard forms, but on the other, you're dealing with detailed financial disclosures and really extensive reporting. When it comes right down to it, understanding where these differences exist is what's going to empower you to build a smart, scalable compliance strategy. It helps you anticipate what's coming, allocate your resources effectively, and really plan your efforts as your fundraising activities expand into new places. So, as we wrap up, here's the key question to ask yourself. As you look at your fundraising ambitions, is your compliance plan truly ready to support those goals? Thanks for watching.